Let's start with this exclusive interview that ITV have got with Nicola Sturgeon, because it really is an eye-opener, if anyone's had a proper preview of it. Because it is an absolute sort of example of that old expression that all political lives end in failure. I mean, just 11 weeks after being the most important person in Scotland, which she had been for decades, Nicola Sturgeon finds herself with the police knocking on the door, going through the house, questioning her personal and political life in tatters. And this comes through in the interview that's been done with her.
She wasn't just the most powerful woman in Scotland, she's one of the most powerful figures in Europe, because she'd been in place as First Minister for so long. She was so... in Scotland, she had no rivals.
She was untouchable.
She was. And she was skillful, she was a very...
And loved,
she was very popular.
Time. She was a great communicator, and people loved her,
out of the blue, she resigned, and we all thought, why? And she said she'd done her time, and some of us were old hacks like me, thought, oh, more to this. And then, was it a coincidence, 11 weeks later, the police are on the front door, and she describes, talking to Julie Etchingham, how when she got to her parents' house, she just broke down because she saw scenes on television of her house looking like a murder scene. You remember there was the tent parked outside,
that's right,
and this was all in connection with an investigation into Scottish National Party finances. Police have taken no further action against her, but it was the most dramatic fall
and until
from grace.
this interview, you know, I never really thought of Nicola Sturgeon as an emotional person at all. She was always very buttoned up and controlled. But in the interview, certainly the clips that we've been shown, she's very emotional.
Yeah, and people like an emotional politician, don't they? I suppose towards the end, had she been a bit more forthright, then maybe she would have been able to cling on for a little bit longer. But the SNP have never recovered. I mean, you look at the state of politics currently in Scotland, and you look at the independence movement, it hasn't ever recovered, and I don't think they can quite find a candidate who'll ever live up to her.
Yeah, because she was hugely charismatic.
We've got a little bit to look at from this. We've got where she talks about Alex Salmond, who, of course, was a formidable force, the SNP, and her mentor, indeed, and then they ended as political enemies and not friends. And this is when she talks about him passing away.
I still miss him in some way, the person that I used to know and the relationship we used to have. But I thought I had made my peace with it, that I'd got to a point where I felt nothing. And then I got a call to tell me that Alex Salmond had died. And I started crying on the phone, and I just was hit by this wave of grief. And it was complicated because obviously we weren't just no longer friends, we were political enemies. There was no prospect I was going to be able to go to his funeral or anything like that.
This is all based, of course, on this autobiography that she's written. Andrew, you've known so many politicians over the last 30, 40 years. You've seen them come and you've seen them go. This obviously is, to some extent, a last hurrah for Nicola Sturgeon. She's put it all down in the book. She's giving these interviews, giving this exclusive interview to ITV. What's left for her after this?
I think she'd hoped, and maybe it could still happen, that there may be a job on the international stage for her, perhaps on the United Nations, something like that. But she's finished politically, domestically. And the Alex Salmond thing was extraordinary. Alex Salmond was her mentor. He was the leader of the Scottish National Party. When independence didn't come back in 2014, she took over. They were great friends, but they fell out spectacularly because he faced a series of allegations which were thrown out in court over inappropriate sexual with women. And he, according to her interview with Julie last night, he thought she would be supportive and perhaps try and get these charges kicked out because she's First Minister, but she did stand back, and it broke the friendship. And last summer, I did a show in Edinburgh Festival with Kevin Maguire. We were on stage with Alex Salmond, and he was still a huge political figure. And divisive. You know, there were some people in the audience who wanted to be there to jeer him, some wanted to be in the audience to cheer him. I don't think Kevin and I mattered, frankly. We were almost spare parts, really. It wasn't a chance to see the big Alex Salmond, because when he fell out with Sturgeon, he set up his own political party, which went nowhere, actually. But it was, again, a dramatic collapse.
Just an attack on Nicola, really, wasn't it? A lot of it, you know. I mean, particularly when it came to the Gender Recognition Act, which now Nicola Sturgeon has revealed in this interview that she wished she hadn't actually pushed through as strongly as she had. But that was their main row. You know, if you did an interview with Alex Salmond, he would want front and centre criticism of that bill.
She was basically saying in that bill, wasn't she? She was saying that you could be whatever gender you decided you were, period.
Well, rather than having the notes of 2 doctors, you still have to be signed off, yes.
Yeah.
It's not as easy as just sort of
Why did she say she regretted it?
Well, I mean, look what happened.
Talk to Julie.
Well, look what happened with Isla Blair, who was the man who decided a rapist ended up in a woman's prison on her watch in Scotland. I mean, that is outrageous because he was identified.
So she misjudged the public mood.
I think she did. I think she got it completely wrong.
Mistake.
I think, and I think that's sometimes what happens when you've been in power for such a long time.
But is it only about political mood? It might have been something she believed in, Ava.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is something that many, many people do believe in. I mean, you look at Mhairi Black, who was also probably one of the standout characters, who was an MP rather than an MSP. But, you know, she's actually recently left the party, and in part that is because of the SNP's change in how they are seeing gender. You know, a lot of people who were fighting for the party do see gender as fluid, not in the way that perhaps Joanna Cherry or those sort of characters did not.
So the other thing that, well, she's made many comments, and we'll be talking about it all morning, I'm sure, because there's a lot in there in this interview. But she also had a clear view, although she admitted it was a personal view, of Nigel Farage. In fact, she described him as odious. Let's have a look at what she says about him.
He just comes across as somebody who's got a very, very fragile ego, somebody who's not particularly comfortable, particularly around women.
I mean, you call him odious.
In the 2015 leaders' debate, just before we went on air that night, I just remember hearing him tell somebody how much he'd had to drink in the green rooms beforehand, and it just felt this kind of bravado and just not very pleasant. But, you know, that's my impression.
But that's what people like about him, isn't it? That's why
it's
they like him.
It's one of those things that, yeah, you could imagine the sort of banter that didn't sit comfortably with Nicola, that is, as you say, Ava, the sort of thing that people love about him.
He's quite... Farage and Salmond were quite similar in some, you know, personality-wise. You know, Salmond could really captivate a room in a sort of populist sense, the way that Farage is able to. And also, I think we can now say this about Salmond, I mean, they both enjoyed a drink.
They certainly did. Yeah, they certainly did. Yes, and let me tell you, Alex Salmond put quite a lot away that time, because we had dinner with him after we did our show on Edinburgh Festival, and we were in it was an alcohol-free Bangladeshi restaurant, and he arrived with 2 supermarket carrier bags clunking with alcohol. It was quite extraordinary.
But Farage that's a point, doesn't he? I mean, it's more of an image thing, isn't it? I mean,
I know and he'd put on, he piled on the weight as well, hadn't he?
Yes.
And of course he literally killed over, didn't he, while he was at a lunch abroad somewhere.
Really?
Not many weeks and months after I did that evening with him, he wasn't looking after himself. He was too big.
You must have both encountered Nicola Sturgeon. Did you find her likeable?
No.
I did.
OK,
I found her very pleasant. That's interesting, yeah. I don't think that she was very... I don't think she's able to come across on camera as likeable, but she was very personable the times that I had interviewed her.
In what way did you not like her?
She was just... she couldn't stand me, I could tell, and that's fine. And she...
What did she not like about you, Andrew?
Probably my politics, and I'm no fan of Scottish independence because I think it would be terrible.
Right.
And she would have known that. But I just was not her sort, and she didn't like me, and that's fine. I've no big beef with her.
Well, Julie Etchingham's after you.
No. I was just going to say the interview's going to air, isn't it, at 7 p.m. on ITV1 and ITVX.
And I do think she's fascinating.
And STV as well. And we're going to talk to Julie herself as well here after 7 to hear her thoughts.
It's not just a political interview. It's very personal. It's a real insight into what happens to somebody when everything that they define themselves by is taken away.
Yeah.
Which is so hard, I think, for people who've devoted their life to politics.
She started in politics about 21 or something. She joined when she was a teenager.
Yes.
Yep.
She's passionate about her cause. She was passionate about her issues.
But trying to find a new life is
going to be difficult for her.
Yeah.
Well, talking of car crashes, which we were, let's talk about driving. How old are you, Andrew?
64.
64. So in 6 years' time...
Andrew.
You'll hit the big 7. I'm just a few months from that now. And according to the front page of the Times this morning, and we've been following it up, and it's true...
Really? Nearly 70?
Yeah, I'll be 70 next May. Anyway, moving on.
Big party,
I'll have to start taking eye tests, all of us. Anyone, once they've hit 70 who wants to drive a car will need to have their eyes tested every 3 years. Now, I would say that on the face of it, that's quite a sensible proposal, because we all know that eyesight deteriorates with age, and we know how stubborn some older people can be about hanging up the car keys. On the other hand, politically, that's quite risky for the government.
Look, it is, because every government has ducked this one. This would be the biggest shake-up in road safety, driving laws for decades, because lots of people in their 70s and 80s value the independence driving the car gives them.
Well, depend on it.
Depend on it, and if they're going to have a test, which could then mean they have to hand back the keys, 71, 72, it's going to be hugely politically unpopular.
Well, it ruins their lives.
I mean, this comes, doesn't it, because a recent coroner's report on the deaths of 4 people killed emerged that it was due to failing eyesight in older people over 70, and said that in the UK we have the laxest rules in Europe. One of only 3 countries to rely on self-reporting of a visual condition. I wonder if one of the issues is going to be whether it's an automatic ban, and would that be even if glasses are worn or contact lenses are worn? Because people of all ages can have deteriorating eyesight.
No, if your vision can be corrected with eyewear, with glasses, you can carry on driving.
But there comes a point where even that doesn't work.
But it's reactions, isn't it? I mean, to me, it's not your vision, right? Because you can sort that. It'd be the reaction time when you get older. Certainly when people hit around 80.
How do you measure that, though, Ava?
You can get macular degeneration, you can get cataracts, and there are all sorts of things which are nothing to do with focus, but to do with simply with the eye being able to actually process images.
Very difficult to get a cataract operation as well in this country.
Yes,
well, that's the problem, because they are miraculous when people have them. Their eyesight's transformed at any age.
This is a minefield. This really is a minefield, and I'd be surprised. I mean, are they going to do this before the election? They're talking about publishing a bill this year.
By the autumn.
Yeah, so they're going to change the law in the next couple of years. Look,
well, before the locals as well next year, which they're already expected to hemorrhage votes in. So it is, I mean, it's brazen, it's bold.
What about the other proposals which they're going to be looking at? For example, lowering the drink-drive limit. So you can actually have probably about half as much to drink as you're allowed to at the moment before getting behind the wheel.
They're getting to the point soon they're going to say no alcohol at all.
Which I think a lot of people advise anyway, don't they?
Yeah, they do. Because if you're small... I can remember once, about 20 years ago, I had a pint in the pub and I'd left I was on my way to my family and I drove out the car park and put the lights on. So I stopped, drink. They did a test and they said, "You're close to over the limit, sir."
You hadn't put your lights on?
I hadn't put my lights on. And I'd had 1 pint and it was the first pint I'd had in a week. And I was nearly over the limit on 1 pint.
I had a very close call as well a few years ago. I was driving back early in the morning from Cornwall and I'd had a few to drink at a barbecue the afternoon before. And I was stopped, can't remember why, and I was breathalyzed. And again, I was under the limit. But I remember the coppers joking, said, "You have done brandy on your cornflakes, have you, Richard?" But it was from the afternoon before. So if there is an absolute ban, and I think you're right, I think we are headed.
I think we're going that way.
Other countries have absolute bans.
They get you on New Year's Day, don't they?
You've got to think about drinking. If you know you're going to be driving the next day, you've got to think about not drinking the day before.
Exactly.
But perhaps that's a good thing.
Because
perhaps that's a good thing.
I'm not saying it's a bad thing.
No, I don't think you are.
It changes the way we behave.
Because last year, over 1,600 people were killed in road accidents. That's a lot. And 28,000 accidents. I think the statistic is every 18 minutes there was a serious injury on our roads. Well, alcohol will be a factor, and people's failing eyesight reactions will be a factor.
And they're also going to be looking at drugs.
Cyclists who drink and then they cycle home. I wonder, especially in big cities,
through
around
red lights.
Absolutely. You see people getting on these, these electronic bikes that you can get on around big cities. And people have definitely had a drink on a Friday or Saturday night.
I'm probably thinking they're doing better because they're cycling and not driving.
I think they're being environmentally friendly too.
Yeah, it's a tricky one, isn't it? But it's not going to be popular because for a lot of people, particularly the over 70 eye test, it is their main way of getting out and retaining independence and getting to hospital appointments and all of that. So
I can remember when my mum's car failed its MOT thinking, good. Because I wasn't convinced she was the safest driver anymore. And I didn't have to tell her, because I kept thinking, I'm going to have to pluck up the courage, because I'm really not sure you saw that car. And
no one wants to be the one to say that, do they?
Did you total the car? Was that your doing?
No.
He was out the front with a hammer.
I was tempted, because, I mean, she said, the car's failed its MOT, son.
And that's because you'd fiddled with the brakes, isn't it?
Yes, exactly.
Shall we talk about ghastly stories surrounding Israel and Gaza? First of all, these journalists, two journalists and 3, technical operators and camera crew have been killed. And Israel, the IDF, certainly has said that one of them at least was targeted because it believed the person to be a terrorist. crikey, we're in a situation where, you know, a formal group of people, we're talking about press that should be protected, not just getting in the way of bombs, which is horrific, of course, for those trying to do their job there, but being specifically targeted. I mean, we have no evidence this person is a terrorist. We have
and
no
it had
evidence.
never been mentioned before. None of this had ever been mentioned before. And
although
this
the journalist
had
in
been...
question felt that he was in line. He had said, I fear I might be assassinated. But is that because of the sort of reporting they were doing?
Well, I mean, even, you know, the past couple of weeks, actually, ITV had some incredible footage. Incredible is a terrible word, but they had footage of these aid flights that were being flown from Jordan. And it was the first time, really, that we'd seen Gaza from the air since, you know, the last year and a half of bombardment. And it was apocalyptic. And there have been, you know, a number of journalists who have now been threatened, do not film outside of those planes. You know, if you are an international journalist at this time, you are not allowed to go into the Gaza Strip.
Which is extraordinary.
It is extraordinary. In no other war has this happened for, you know, for a considerable amount of time.
But the Israeli government is saying categorically that the journalist who was killed and the team around him that were, if you like, collateral damage, they are accusing him absolutely of being the leader of a Hamas cell. What are we to make of that?
I mean, he's been on Al Jazeera for quite some time now. He's been a featured journalist. You know, look, I don't know the intent. I think that, you know, had he been a Hamas operative, I'm pretty sure that Al Jazeera would have done some form of checks before putting him on the air for the last couple of years.
And you remember that old expression, the first casualty in war is truth. And so you'll know who knows who's telling the truth here.
Well, moving back here, what do we make of over 500 arrests in London at the weekend? These very specific targeted demonstrations, quite clever in terms of PR. Dozens and dozens of people, hundreds of people, holding up placards saying that they were against genocide. Nothing wrong with saying that. It's free speech. Obviously, they were relating it to Israel's campaign in Gaza. They can say what they like about that. And then underneath that would be all the letters and that they support Palestine Action, which is a prescribed terrorist group. And it was a direct challenge.
Basically.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Direct challenge to the law, and they were arrested. What do we think?
It's a bad look for Labour. It's a bad look. And I know that the Home Secretary has said that, that she has been privy to information about Palestine Action that is not in the public domain, and that is why it is now a prescribed terror organisation. I think if the Home Secretary came clear to the public what those links are, then perhaps people could redirect their protest. But I don't think that the layman quite understands that they are now out under terrorism law. I think that would be quite a shock for a number of the people who went yesterday.
And half of those arrested was 60 or over.
One of them was 89.
Yeah, so not what you might see as the usual sort of disruptive demographic.
It was the biggest number of arrests in England since the poll tax riots back in 1990, which effectively triggered the end of Mrs Thatcher's premiership. And there was real violence on that day. Terrible violence, terrible criminal damage. There wasn't violence or criminal damage on Saturday. Look, those Saturday marches drive me nuts because we get them every Saturday, pro-Palestine, but this is a democracy and we allow people to march and protest.
Drive you nuts as somebody living in London?
Yes, exactly.
Right.
Because, and I know for a lot of Jewish people feel they can't go into central London because of it. But 500 people arrested?
Well, because they were openly supporting a prescribed group, a banned group, a terrorist organisation, as described by the British government. What are the police supposed to do?
Difficult. They're in
that's
the
what they've said.
position.
Yeah, that's what they've said this morning.
They're following the rules of the law of the land, which the law was only passed very recently.
It's not, you know, particularly at a time when many people around the UK feel that, you know, their house might be robbed or their phone might be stolen and they only get a crime reference number for the police because the police don't have enough capacity to attend their crime. To see 500 people arrested and processed, you know, there are questions here. How were you able to supply that many police in such a short amount of time?
Well, they bust them in from other regions.
Yeah, and I was at the theatre on Saturday afternoon, took my sister to the theatre on Saturday, and we saw it, the march. It was going on and on and on, and the police were everywhere, and the whole of Central London completely disrupted by it.
And then on Sunday, there were protests, if you like, from the other side calling for the release of the hostages. And that's the problem, that the wounds are so raw on all sides in this, aren't there?
Yeah, yeah. But the pro-Palestinian people, there's more of them, and they make a louder noise.
Well, the other big story over the weekend and running into the beginning of this week is this proposal to deport foreign asylum seekers in this country who have committed a crime which merits a jail sentence. In the past, they would have been sent to jail and then possibly deported at the end of that sentence. The proposal now is that if a judge or a magistrate decides that this person is got to do some jail time, they go straight back to the country of origin.
That's great as long as we've got a return agreement with that country, which is not always straightforward. But I'd go further. We've got 11,000 foreign criminals in our prison. Kick them all out. Deport them all. We've got an agreement. Why have we got them here? What does it cost? £42,000 a year. We've got a huge problem with prisons. We've got on the front page of the Mail serious prisoners, some of whom have been sentenced to 14 years in prison, being allowed out early. I mean, they're in prison because of a serious offence. If you kick out the foreign prisoners, 11,000, you've got more room in your jails.
I wonder if it's a little ill thought through, though, because consider a crime was committed against you or a family member. You would want to see that person put into prison, right? You'd want to at least believe that there's going to be some kind of retribution or rehabilitation for that person. If they are hypothetically deported, how can you ensure that that country is going to imprison them?
Well,
how do you know that they can't just, roam free?
Well, that is the risk.
That's the balance, isn't it?
That is the balance, it is, exactly.
And it's very reform-coded, this, isn't it? It's sort of, it's chasing the reform argument, which the whole strategy of Labour right now feels very confused. On the front of the Times, you've got this anti-over-70s policy, and then you've also got this, pro-over-70s policy by chasing the reform Conservative line. It's very confused.
Although I think people broadly, if someone has been found guilty of a crime over here, don't want to then have their taxpayers' money using to keep them alive.
It's about 40,000 a year.
And don't like the idea that appeals meant that it would go on for a long time while we were still funding them before they were deported. So you can sort of see that most people would feel like this isn't a bad idea, or am I wrong?
Well, no, I think it would be very popular, and I think I would kick them all out of our prisons as well, the lot. And if you can deport them the moment they've committed the crime here, but I say, Ava makes the point, how you ensure that they're jailed when they get to the other end. But if you can kick them out of the country and keep them out of the country, well,
that is part of it.
Yeah,
it's bound
so you
to
can
return.
keep them out of the country.
Yeah, people like that. Can we have a quick look at a debate that's got coming up, which I know you're both going to have a view on? This is the scumbag debate. So this is a shop owner, Rob Davies, in North Wales. He runs a sort of retro vintage clothing shop. Was so fed up with shoplifting that he put this sign in saying, due to scumbag shoplifting, please ask for assistance to open cabinets. As you can see, it's a simple handwritten sign, because obviously he's having to lock things away now. He then gets a knock at the door, as it were, from police who tell him that actually he shouldn't be using that word. There have been complaints because it causes offence. Your thoughts?
Well, it doesn't offend me in the slightest. What offends me is that the police find time to go and remonstrate with him when they're never there when they're shoplifting. I mean, it's one of the big scandals in modern Britain now, that shoplifting, you can get away with it. I mean, there was a limit before, unless it was 200 or 250 quid, the police didn't even look. Lots of little village shops, corner shops now have to have a security guard there because of shoplifting. This bloke is speaking for ordinary people.
Well, let's hear from him, actually. We're going to be hearing a bit more from him later in the programme, but just here's a clip now.
If I offend somebody that's stealing from me, shame. I care not. I don't mind how they think, how they feel. If it affects their mental health, they're affecting my mental health. I'm offended. And I'm sorry, but I'm, if you like, the victim here, not them. So when it comes down to it, I'll make no apologies for my post in my shop. As I've said to many people, it'll stay there. It may well even get larger so that everybody can see it.
So in our debate later, Chantal is going to argue that actually, it can be counterproductive, because if you have someone stealing because they've fallen on hard times, they're stealing food and milk, which wouldn't be in his shop, then labelling them as scumbags means they're less likely to ask for help to solve the core problems.
Yeah, I mean, I think
cuts no ice with me, I'm afraid.
Well, I would turn a blind eye, I think, in a big corporation. If it was a mega supermarket and someone was stealing a sandwich, I would turn a blind eye. But, I mean, there's no reason to be stealing from a thrift shop. That's just someone who's got...
Well, it seems to me it breaks down into two central questions, doesn't it? One, are you entitled to describe someone who is repeatedly stealing from you, essentially burgling your store on a regular basis as a scumbag? And you are fully entitled to call them what you like, actually.
Yes, you are.
Even that rude of a word.
And the second question is it anything to do with the police?
Yeah.
I mean,
No.
it's not as if he was using foul language.
Yeah, how is
Wasn't
that
using the F-word.
how is that affecting civil disobedience
I
or
can't
law
see
and
how
order?
it's affecting anything.
But I'd go further. There's some move now. Some local shopkeepers want to put a picture of repeat offenders in their shop.
Not allowed to.
Not allowed to.
So
Why?
there's
Breaches of civil
concerns
rights.
about data
Human
protection,
rights,
isn't it?
data protection.
Data protection.
What about the right of the shopper who's trying to make a living and is struggling? Because every time somebody nicks something, that's less
So
money
that
for
means
him.
he would never have a wanted poster.
Exactly.
That's
Yeah.
the logical extension of that
I
argument.
know.